everybody. So this is the last lesson of the week, and today we look at vocabulary at a proficient English level from a newspaper article. The article is about Mozambique and it's from the newspaper The New York Times, and I hope that you find this very interesting. If you want to contact me on social media, you can contact me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest and WhatsApp. Also, during this lesson, if you have a question, if you have a comment, please leave your question in the Facebook chat and I can respond to any question or comment that you have. So, the topic is very interesting, as you can see. Also, my schedule is very similar to last week, and probably next week will be similar compared to this week. Today, as I said, we're at the end of the week and we are discussing vocabulary from the newspaper, but it's important that the schedule next week will be very similar. Everything is free and everything is for the public. This is my project at the moment, to give as much advice and tips and lessons on the internet for free, and I started this during the pandemic and I think it's a very good project. Yes, I have expenses and my costs, so if you can support me, that would be very helpful as well. There are two ways to support me. One is through the bank details is possible here, and the second is through PayPal. You can find all the information on my Facebook page on the pinned post, and your support will definitely help me continue with this project. Everything is free, as I said, but if you are a company or a business and you want to sponsor my lesson, you can put your company information and company business here, and I can speak about your project and your business during this lesson as well if you want. Okay, great. So let's begin with this article, and you can see the picture is incredible, amazing, and it's from Mozambique. So let's discuss some of the vocabulary. Here we can see a sunset swim on Benguera Island, the second largest island in the Bazaruta archipelago. Okay, typically in this type of lesson, the structure and the method is I read in English and practice pronunciation, and after the paragraph I stop and return and explain the key vocabulary and expressions from the text. I have subtitles available, so on Facebook you can select the subtitle option, and this will allow you to read the words that I am saying during this video, and maybe that's a good idea as well, to select the subtitles option. Okay, so let's begin and try to understand the context of this text. A herd in exile riding horses on Mozambique's Bazaruto archipelago. A photographer spent a few weeks helping run a horseback riding program on the white sand beaches of Benguera Island. Here is what she saw. Okay, so the photographs and the text are by Claire Thomas, and let's begin. With a map in one hand and a cold beer in the other, I sat alone at the bar of the Baobab Beach Backpackers Lodge in the coastal town of Vilanculo, gazing out at the sweeping sandbars and vivid turquoise waters that surround Mozambique's Bazaruto archipelago. I had planned to leave the following morning for Zimbabwe, and I was chatting with the bartender about the logistics of my trip. Then suddenly a car's headlights lit up the bar and I saw a familiar face heading toward me. I had a feeling my plans were about to change. Okay, not bad. So the introductions generally are very clear and not too difficult, and this is exactly the same. There are maybe 2 or 3 key words from this text. The first one is the verb to sit. This is irregular and it's in the past sat. Sit, sat. So always irregular verbs are very important to remember, and this is one example: to sit and to sat, and sat in the past. Alone. At is the preposition for location. At the cafe, at the bar, at the hotel, at the restaurant, specific location, we use the preposition at. Okay. coast is the noun. This is the coast, but the adjective is a coastal town. So this is the adjective to describe the town. The town is on the coast, but the adjective specifically is coastal. This is very, very important, and this is the most difficult vocabulary yet. The verb is to gaze, and it's with the preposition out. So first we have the verb to look and to see and to watch. They are very similar, but also very, very different. So to look is more general. You look and you look out the window, you look at something, you look for. So we have different prepositions connected with look, and it's very general. See is also very general, and there's less focus, less attention. So if you look, it's more attention and specific preposition. You look out, concentration, look. But see is more general. So for example, at this moment, I see a computer, I see a door, I see a light. So it's just more general to see, but look is more focused and more specific. To watch is definitely more concentration, and something is moving. If something is moving, you watch the finger. The football is moving, you watch the football. You watch the game, you watch the tennis. The television is moving, you watch the television. So typically concentration, when something is moving, you watch. Okay, now we have the verb to stare, to gaze, to glance, and to glimpse. We have lots of vocabulary related to the vision and perspective. So to stare is like fixation. When you look at a person and you stare at the person, fixation, no change, no movement, just stare. Okay, sometimes it's impolite. It's not good to stare. It is rude to stare. So very, very important verb to stare, and it's a little impolite and a little rude. To gaze is very, very similar to fixate, like to stare, very similar, except it's more romantic and it's more admiration. So for example, in Mozambique, the view, the vista is incredible. So you're gazing out and you're staring, fixated, but it's more romantic and beautiful. Okay, to glance is completely different. To glance is to look very quickly. So if you glance at the program, you look very quickly. And to glimpse has a similar meaning, that you look very, very quickly. A glance and a glimpse. So here we have 7 different words to describe perspectives and similar vocabulary to looking. Okay, so here gazing out is staring, fixated in a romantic, beautiful sense. At the sweeping sandbars, this is very difficult as well. So a sandbar, I think, is the bar to buy a drink in the water on the beach. So I think it's on the beach. The bar on the beach is a sandbar. And sweeping is the verb to sweep. And obviously you sweep the floor because the floor is dirty, so you sweep the floor. My jumper is dirty, so I sweep maybe. So if something is sweeping, it's in every part. So basically sweeping sandbars is the significance that there are a lot of sandbars in that particular place. So it's very, very difficult vocabulary and very creative in this case. So don't worry too much about that. The pronunciation here is very difficult. In English we say turquoise, and it's a particular color. It's very, very light blue, almost with a mix of light green. It's turquoise, and that is the color, and it's vivid, so it's very clear, and the pronunciation is important, turquoise. Okay, here we have the verbal tense. The verb is to plan. It's regular, plan, planned, and in this situation we had the past perfect. The formula to create the past perfect is the extra auxiliary verb to have in the past plus the participle. So I had planned, that's the past perfect, to leave, but something different happened in the past. The past perfect is the time in the past typically before another action in the past simple. So I had planned to leave and I was chatting. That's the past continuous, to chat, with the bartender. The bartender is another way to say waiter or waitress, maybe a little different. So I'll show you the vocabulary here. We have a bartender, we have a waiter, and a waitress. So tender is very similar to sell. It's very advanced, but the significance is to sell. So the bartender is maybe the person selling, or also it's the verb to attend to someone. And this means to pay attention and to help. So the bartender maybe is the person who's paying attention to you and helping you as well. So it's a really interesting word, but also the typical words are a waiter, a waitress, a barman, or a bar woman as well. So there's lots of different ways to say more or less the same thing. Maybe a bartender is more typical in the United States, perhaps. So I was chatting in the past continuous with the bartender about the logistics, pronunciation, the plans and the movement and the criteria and the itinerary of my trip. Then suddenly, very quickly, another way to say suddenly is out of the blue. Okay, out of the blue means suddenly, very, very quickly, very surprisingly, unexpectedly. Out of the blue, suddenly, a car's headlights. So the headlights are the principal lights in the car. The most dominant, the strongest lights in the car are the headlights. Very specific vocabulary for the car. Here we have the phrasal verb, and it originates from the verb to light, which is similar to illuminate, but specifically it is the verb to light. And it's possible the phrasal verb to light up. So this means to illuminate everything. Up is the significance, everything. The second significance of light up is typical for a cigarette. If you have a cigarette and you want to light up the cigarette, this means to start smoking the cigarette that is lit. So the verb is to light, pronunciation, light up. The past is lit. And that's the key part here. The past is irregular, light and lit. So typically for a candle, you light a candle in the present, but in the past you lit a candle. And in this situation, the headlights of the car illuminated the bar in the past. They covered the bar with light and they lit up. So it's irregular in the past. And also the adjective is lit as well. And this is typical in terms of a party. If it's very typical nowadays in modern culture as well to use this word. When you say that the party is lit, this means the party is on fire, the party is very good, the party is amazing, the party is lit. It's possible also to say a person is lit, and this means the person is very enthusiastic, very energetic, very motivated, or maybe very intoxicated as well. So it's a very, very interesting word, particularly nowadays. However, in this sense, it's very literal and very understandable that the bar was suddenly, quickly illuminated by the lights of the car. And I saw, this is an irregular verb. The verb is to see, and the past is irregular, saw. A familiar face heading toward. Level intermediate, this is difficult. But for fluent English speakers, this is very common and very important. The verb in English is to head. And this means really to go. Exactly the same. Obviously, this is your head. And we have a lot of expressions related to head. For example, use your head. Be intelligent. Okay, use your head. But the verb is very, very common in English. The verb to head. And this has the significance to go. For example, I am heading to the shop. I am going to the shop. I am heading to the cinema. I am going to the cinema. I am heading to the cafe. I am going to the cafe. So the verb to head has the significance to go. Okay, and that's really, really important. So in this situation, a familiar face is going, and the key word here is the preposition toward. Very, very important. In Spanish, it's hacia, direction. So in English, we have lots of different directions. We say forward, backward, sideward, downward. So basically all the directions in English have the suffix ward. Forward, backward, sideward, downward. And also we say toward. So it's moving in this direction. Okay, so it's a really good word in English. So therefore, heading toward me means moving or coming in the direction to me. I had, so this is the verb to have, irregular again. Have, had in the past, a feeling, a sensation. My plans, as is the subject, were about to. About to means just a moment before. For example, this is very, very important structure. About to is the moment before. For example, today, now, I am about to have my lunch. I am about to have my dinner just a moment before having lunch. I am about to call my friend. I will call my friend just before now. So that's the significance here. So my plans change, I expect, very soon. So it's really good quality and very fluent, and that's very important to know. So that is the first paragraph. Interesting, of course, and some important vocabulary and some interesting structures here. So in this case, I think the introduction is very general, not too difficult. I hope we have more vocabulary as we continue. Questions. If you have a question, if you have a comment, please put your question in the Facebook chat and I can answer your questions at any moment during the lesson, but probably after the lesson I can respond to any questions that you have. Okay, let's continue to the next paragraph. First, I read to give us an idea, and then I analyze the vocabulary to check the key words and the key grammar. I had met Mandy Retzlaff a few days earlier. She and her husband Pat, former residents of Zimbabwe, are the founders of Mozambique Horse Safari, a family-run horseback safari company that I had the pleasure of riding with in Vilanculo. As a special treat for my birthday, my friend Alice and I had travelled some 200 miles from Tofo, a small coastal village well known for its diving, snorkeling and whale shark sightings, for a ride with the company after we had heard about their extraordinary story and the magnificent excursions they offered. Okay, first we have the verb to meet. And when you meet a person, this is very well known, it's very international, you meet. The past is irregular, meet and met. Another irregular verb in the past in English, therefore it's very important. The subject is I, and the auxiliary, the extra verb, is the verb to have in the past. I had met. The period of time in the past, usually before another moment in the past simple. I had met Mandy Retzlaff a few days earlier. A small quantity. Remember, there is a difference between a few and only few. And that's very, very important. So let me explain a little here to you. There is a difference between a few and few. Okay, and for example, a few books. I have a few books, or I have few books. What is the difference? Well, a few books is the significance, a small quantity, but you are content, you are happy. I have a few books, I have a small quantity, but everything is good, everything is sufficient, and everything is fine. However, I have few books. The significance is the quantity is insufficient. You do not have enough. You have insufficient quantity of books, and that's a very important difference, and you are not content. So the first example, you are happy, you are content, but the second example, you are not content, it is insufficient. So in this case, it's not applicable, it's not related, but just for the future, it's important to know. She and her husband, Pat, former resident. Massively important word, former. Former job, former house, former position, former boss. This basically means ex or previous. So former residence has the significance previous residents, previous inhabitants of Zimbabwe. So former is very, very important in English, really meaning previous. Former position, previous position. Former job, previous job. A founder is the person who creates the business, the person who creates the association, the person who creates the company. This is a founder. And that's quite clear because normally the suffix er represents a person. Run, run is typical with the company. You run a business, you run a company, you run a school, you manage and you direct. So in this situation, it's the adjective. Family run originally is two independent words, but the hyphen, this little word or this little punctuation is the hyphen, and the hyphen combines the two words to make one word adjective. So therefore family run is one adjective. Horseback, another adjective, that people are on the back of the horse. Safari company, that I had the pleasure. Grammatically, this is the auxiliary verb have in the past, had, plus the past participle. So this is incredible because in English it's possible to say I had. And this means the past perfect of the verb to have. The pleasure of riding with the company. Okay, so pleasure is flexible in English. We say a pleasure to meet you. So nice to meet you, a pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is all mine is another maybe formal and possible way to respond. And this is the significance here. So the pleasure of riding with Vinaklu as a special treat. A treat is like an award, a gift, a benefit, a treat. It's very important because we have the verb as well, to treat your friend well. This means to deal with your friend very well, to speak with your friend, to talk with your friend, to negotiate with your friend, to speak with your friend very well, to do good things for your friend, to treat your friend very well. However, in the hospital or in the medical situation, it's important to treat a person as well. If you are a doctor, you treat the patient, and this means that you give medicine, you give attention to the patient, to treat the patient, and that is important for sure. So it's a little bit flexible, and there's two different significances, and we must know them very well. So a special treat is a special prize, a special gift for my birthday. Next, big question. My friend Alice and I. Question, why I and not me? Why not? So is it I or me? Obviously it's I, but why? So my friend Alice and I, this is the subject. Alice is the subject and also I am the subject because it's the position before the verb. It's clearly the subject pronoun. I like, I travel, you travel. Therefore, it's necessary the subject pronoun and not the object pronoun. So Alice and I is the subject and the verb is travel, and it's the past perfect. Had traveled approximately 200 miles from Tofu, a small coastal adjective village well known for its diving and snorkeling. So remember, a snorkel is the object in your mouth for respiration. So the air, the oxygen, comes through the pipe and into the snorkel. So that is the type of activity and hobby that you do, swimming underwater with the tube, and that's snorkeling. Here again, verbal, tense, and grammatically speaking, we have the subject we plus had heard about. So there is a lot of structure here in the past perfect. They're extraordinary. So the pronunciation is possible too. You have extra and ordinary, extraordinary, but very frequently the pronunciation is extraordinary, extraordinary. So the stress is not here. Sometimes that's the pronunciation. Sometimes people say extraordinary, but there's no real problem with the pronunciation here. An excursion is very similar in Latin languages as well, a trip they offered. And here you can see another beautiful picture of Mozambique and the horse. Okay, so let me read. A view of turquoise waters, and this is exactly the color of the water, turquoise. So a view of turquoise waters and sandbars. A sandbar is not the bar, a sandbar is a beach. So my mistake. A sandbar is a piece, a stretch of the beach that surround Benguera Island from the back of a horse named Vumba. The horses wear face guards to protect their eyes from flies and the sun without affecting their vision. Very interesting. So almost like sunglasses. Maybe that's possible for people. So that's an incredible picture, and you can see the beaches, the water, and also the pronunciation is very important of the beach. Very important, because a lot of people confuse two words. One word is fine and the other word is an insult. So the insult is this one. So maybe you're familiar with this word, but this is an insult in English, and this one is the beach, for the sea. So the pronunciation is the beach, and this one's completely different. It's like itch, and an itch is when you feel the sensation, you need to scratch, you have an itch. So itch, and with the B is different. So beach. So basically there's a big difference in the pronunciation in English between each and itch. Very different. Itch, each. And you place the B before and you have two different words. Okay, so let's continue for this paragraph. Not too difficult. So maybe we continue with one or two more paragraphs just to give you a little short lesson today for some vocabulary from the newspaper. Again, questions. Put your question in the Facebook chat and I can answer any questions you have at any moment, but probably after. On the morning, because on is typical for the day, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday. So typically for a day, we use the preposition on. On the morning of my birthday, Alice and I, again, had enjoyed. That is the past. Perfect. Had enjoyed. An exhilarating, a very exciting, an amazing, dramatic, emotional, exciting ride at low tide. You remember tide last week? I explained the tide for the ocean. The tide is in or the tide is out in relation to the sea. If the water comes into the land or away from the land, this is the tide. Along Vilanculo's palm tree lined beach. So a palm tree is a special type of tree, and basically it's lined, it's on the side of the beach. You have the palm trees on both sides of the beach, and that's the significance, palm tree lined. Pat was our guide, and his introductory words: we'll have to ride fast to reach, to arrive to the red dune. The dune is the location for the beach. We typically say sand dune before the tide comes in. Music to our ears. This is a very famous expression. In English we can say it is music to my ears, and basically this means it sounds fantastic, it sounds great, everything is good, it's music to my ears, it's fantastic, it's good. Okay, final paragraph, I think, and then we will finish because it's Saturday and it's the end of the week, and I think this is sufficient. Okay. Riding side by side atop spirited and exceptionally well-trained horses, we thundered over the white sand, pausing to give the horses a break before cantering up the steep red dune. From the top of the dune, a pallet of bright blue hues stretched over the peeping sandbars toward the 5 islands of Bazaruto archipelago. Traditionally, how boats dotted the seascape, we watched as fishermen pulled in their nets and local women carried their catch ashore. Huh. It's the last paragraph, but we have a lot of vocabulary here. So side by side is together. You can walk side by side. You can work side by side. You can do anything side by side with the significance together. Atop is on top. It's a more formal way to say on top. And on because it's the horse. You're on top the horse, but you're also atop. So basically, that's the significance of on top. And in this case, on top of the horse, riding the horse on top, atop. Spirited is an adjective for the horse that is very energetic, very positive, very enthusiastic. He is very spirited. So it's a very interesting adjective, a very motivated, enthusiastic horse. Exceptional also is an adjective, but in this situation it's the adverb, exceptionally well-trained horses. So incredibly well-trained horses, and that's quite clear. Next, subject, we. The verb to thunder, and normally thunder is related to the weather. We have lightning, and you have thunder. Thunder is the very strong noise. So in this situation, to thunder means to move very quickly and very dramatically and very powerfully. If you thunder over the sand, you're moving with the horse very strong, very powerfully. Pausing has the significance to stop. To give is connected with a break. To give me a break, to give you a break, to give you a time to relax. Next, we have the verb to canter, and this is very specific with horses. The running and the movement of the horse is the verb to canter. So I'll show you the vocabulary. In English we say to run, to trot, and to canter. And run is more for people. Trot is specific for the horse, and it means to go relaxed, casually, but very slow, but you're trotting. To canter is specific for the horse, and it means to move very fast, to move very quick, and that's very important as well. Adjective, steep, very, very important. So the cliff is steep. The cliff is steep. The hill is steep, and this means very big inclination. Okay, so it has a very big dramatic inclination. We can say in English the price is steep, and this means the price is very expensive, extortionate, very, really bad. It's steep, it's very expensive. Also, there is another context. For example, you are steeped, and this means very lucky or very fortunate. You are steeped, you are very fortunate. So there's lots of different contexts with this word steep. However, here it's just inclination, and the dune is for the place for the sand. From the top of the dune, a palette. For the artist has the palette, and it's the board with the paint, the different paints. That's a palette. Also, when you eat, in your mouth, your palate is the top part of your mouth, typically where you identify the flavors. So this food is very good for your palate. You can taste a lot of different flavors in your palate. Okay, next. A hue is a very advanced way to say a color. So for example, this jumper is black with a brown hue, and basically it means like a shade, a sense, or a tone, a shade, a type of a color, a hue. So it's really, really advanced English. Stretched, very important as well. The verb to stretch is to move. before you exercise, you stretch your muscles, you stretch your body, and it's very flexible in English. We have lots of different significance and different contexts for the verb to stretch. So in this situation, the pallet stretched over the sandbars. So basically, it's very, very descriptive English to describe the sky. The color of the sky was beautiful. It's like a palette, like the artist. The sky is like the palette of blue colors, moving, stretching. Peeping is very difficult because the verb is to peep, and this means to look secretively. Okay, so this is the significance to peep. To peep. For example, if you play hide and seek, it's a game in English, hide and seek, and you need to count. So you count to 10, 1, 2, 3, and you peek. Peek is when you look, you cheat, and you start looking a little. That's to peek, to make a little look secretively. So in this situation, the sand is starting to appear, but very secretively. It's very descriptive English, very difficult. Okay, this is a mistake. I don't understand here. Dotted, but basically traditional boats, I think this is, we can remove. So basically traditional boats, dotted the seascape. Normally in English we say landscape, and the landscape is the thing you see on the land, but the seascape is just the same except describing the sea. However, the key word is dotted, and this is very important because a dot is, for example, www dot, that is a dot, and it's very important. So, for example, a map, you look at the map of the city and you identify different locations. Here's a cafe, a good cafe, like dots. So it's possible to say there are lots of cafes dotted around the city. There are cafes in different positions of the city. So there are lots of cafes dotted around the city in different locations. I'll give you that example. Dotted around the city. So a lot of cafes in different parts of the city. Okay, so in this situation, the boats, you can see the boat like dots on the picture. We watched as, while, the fishermen, plural. Remember, singular is man, fisherman, but plural, men. Pulled in their nets. So the net is the object to catch the fish. And local women, plural, singular, woman, plural, women. Carried, the verb to carry in the past. Their catch, this is the noun, the verb is to catch, but it's the noun a catch, ashore, to bring it to the land, to bring it ashore. Okay, perfect. That is 3 or 4 very, very interesting paragraphs. I think this activity is very good to read and to learn new vocabulary and to study some grammar. I think it's excellent because it combines a lot of different parts of English. So I think it's really good. Thank you for watching. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for watching live, and thank you for watching recorded. Please like the video if you want. Like the video, comment, and maybe share the video with a friend who's interested in learning English. My plan is to have lessons every day. So hopefully next week my schedule will be more or less similar to this. And we are finished this week. A lot of lessons this week. We had 18 lessons this week. Very good, full of content, difficult, but good work. And thank you for watching, and thank you for paying attention to some of the videos as well. Everything is free. If you want to support me, if you want to make a donation for my work, you can make a donation with the bank transfer, or you can make a donation with PayPal. The information for PayPal is in my Facebook post, and your support will be very welcome as well if you can support me. If you're a company, companies can support me as well, and businesses can advertise with me, and you can put your company information here, and you can sponsor and support my project as well. And I can explain your company in return to people watching. Great. So that is everything. Again, if you want to contact me on social media, You can contact me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, and WhatsApp as well if you have any questions or any comments to make. And that is fantastic if you want to do that. Great. Thank you so much for today. Have a very good day, and hopefully you can leave your comment, or we can stay in contact on Facebook as well. So thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully see you on Monday morning for some more grammar. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.